Hey guys, Eric here. Welcome to Rant and Review. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Acolyte Season 1, Episode 4. So careful for spoilers if you're not caught up with Acolyte this season. You've been warned. Let's get into it. So I'm just going to jump right to the part that annoyed me the most about this episode as I was watching it in the moment, and that was the ending. The ending of the episode, the cliffhanger, really annoyed me. It was also a short episode, so I wanted more in episode length, and I thought the cliffhanger was really, I don't know, annoying for them to end it that way. And I know some people are going to disagree about that, and if you do, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on that. But the episode took a long path to get to this big reveal, and I think everybody was waiting for it. I know most people watching the episode probably knew, because I think people look online and they try to get spoilers and stuff. They probably knew that we were going to get some sort of a reveal at the end of the episode. And when we finally get to that big moment, it just kind of cuts off. And thank goodness this isn't a movie, because if this was like a part one to a movie, and we were heading into part two, I think it would have been, it wouldn't have been good. Anyway, so this episode I think was much better than the previous episode. Obviously, the bar was very low coming out of episode 3, and this one did sort of bounce back a little bit with some of the stuff that happens. And we finally get to go to this forest planet and go looking for Kanaka, and that's another sort of letdown for me. I understand that they're trying to be very like the moves they're making in this series seem to be like super intentional, and they definitely want things to have purpose. And so we don't really get to learn much about this character. Of course, we saw him in the episode where they were, dealing with the witch coven, but we didn't really get to know this character. And then in this week's episode, we get to see him sort of living the van life off the grid, clearly still upset about what happened in that episode. The flashbacks there is for what, almost 2 decades. He's been sort of tucked away here. And so we like, I want to know more about this. And then we don't get any answers because he gets unalived before we ever even learn anything about him, because of the pushing of May's story. And so look, Kalmaka's not a main character. I get it, but they're trying to push hard with May's story. And he ends up being taken out before we ever learn anything. And I'm jumping all over the place, but I'm sorry. It's just my train of consciousness here. So Kamir, I believe that's how you say his name. Kamir is with May, giving her help to get through this forest. And the more I think about it, the more I kind of hope that he isn't her master. I kind of hope he isn't, because it feels super obvious that he is. And I think most people pick that up early on. So I kind of hope that he isn't. I'm hoping there's another layer to this, not because there needs to be. They certainly could just make him this person and run with that. But I think as a viewer, it would be super satisfying for me to be wrong about it and for them to twist it and do something else. But this isn't Lost. It's not, maybe it's not a show that's going to have that many twists and turns, but I feel like that would be really satisfying if it ends up not being that character, because it just seems too convenient for him to be this person that worked at a shop selling little odds and ends to also be this like super evil Sith Lord character that is able to take out all these Jedi. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe they're going for the unassuming aspect, but it's super obvious to me that's what they're trying to set up, because he knows his way through the forest. He knows where Kanaka is. And to me, that seems like it's a big sort of, I don't want to say red flag, but sort of like, hey, look at me. I'm the person that's doing all of this. And so for that sake, I hope that they change that story and do something different with it. Let's talk a bit about the Jedi drama. So a lot of people seem to be upset that the Jedi are not the quote unquote good guys. And I would argue that as someone who is not totally invested in all of the Star Wars lore, somebody who is, again, just a casual viewer of what Star Wars is, I've never perceived the Jedis as only being the good guys. I think that's something that maybe has been established by fans who look through rose-colored lenses at all of this. To me, the Jedi have always been sort of shifty and shady, and there are Jedi that do live by this their code. You know what I mean? There are Jedi that do that, but there's also Jedi that don't. And you're like, well, that doesn't make them a Jedi then. There's something else. Yes, but they were masquerading as things they were not before we found out about it. So it is quite possible there's something going on shady with the Jedi. I think Master Vernestra definitely giving that off. Definitely giving off the vibe that something is happening behind the scenes. And so I think there's intention with that. And I also think nitpicking the show on these kinds of details before we get to the end of the season is a little early to jump the gun. And I mean, that's the internet, right? Like everything has to be, people have to pick something immediately and then stick to that tooth and nail all the way through. And I learned a long time ago watching shows like The Flash on the CW, if you remember, I used to review that. Early on, we had like 20 to 23 episodes, and there were certain things that I would get upset about, and I would not let the storytelling process do its thing. So for me, there's questions that you want answered in the episodes, and there's questions that you can just wait to get answered throughout the season. And the question of whether or not the Jedi in this series are 100% good, bad, evil, whatever they are, I think that question is a longer question that needs to be answered as we watch the season. I don't think it's a question that's going to be answered in an episode, just one episode in the middle of the season. So I think that's a unfair question to have about a series where they're telling us a story over, almost 10 episodes. So I think that we need to like that reactionary stuff. It serves for like very lowbrow, short attention span shit on the internet. And I can't even play into that at all. There's also some drama about the character of Mundy, and some fans are talking about that. I already saw that online. It says here, I did a little bit digging, that that Mundy had suggested to be born 40 years after this point in the timeline. But then they're saying the Acolyte is not altering canon. The birth date came from an obscure non-canonical computer program. And also, what if the series had made Mundy older than he'd said he'd been before? Because Andor retconned Cassian's age and backstory. And we don't know, I guess, the lifespan of his species. And Mundy's fellow council members like Yoda, Yaddle, Poof, and Rancisis are hundreds of years old. Why not Mundy? So there's a lot of drama around that. And I'm going to err on the side of it's Star Wars. Like, unless they're changing something about a character that seems unchangeable, something set in stone, I feel like that's not a big deal. We're talking about the age of a character, how long a character has been around, and these are aliens. So for me, it's like that's it's a mutable thing. Like I feel like you can change that if you need to, especially from a character that hasn't had a proper full-on storyline yet. We also have Saul using Osha as bait for May, and I don't know. The people talk about like good characters, bad characters. I feel like these are multifaceted characters because that's such a weird thing to do, because it definitely puts Osha in harm's way. Yeah, and it's pretty much the gist of the episode. There are like obviously interpersonal conversations that happen, but most of them are character building moments. They don't provide a lot in terms of the longer story. They are very unique between the characters, and it strengthens the bond between them, like the moments between like whether Osha should have a blaster or not, things like that. But ultimately it leads up to them finding Kalnaka in the woods, and this showdown between May, who is inside of the cabin now, who has turned on Kamir and her master, only to find out that her master is on the planet where Kamir happens to be, who is also not in the scene because he was tied up by May. And Osha standing in the back. The Jedi are moving forward, and of course this evil Sith character comes floating down in the background, which was absolutely horrifying. I have to say, I love the design of the character. I love the helmet. I love the mask. I think it's really good. So we get to see the scene in the background, and I thought that was rather frightening and well done. And the Jedi are rushing towards him, and he just kind of pushes everybody away using the Force, and seems pretty badass to me. So I'm very curious to see how badass this character is and what we're going to be getting from him, in the series. So I enjoyed it. I thought this episode was pretty solid. Definitely a step up from the previous episode. However, the fake out brings it down a little bit for me. So I'd adjust my score. When I say fake out, I mean the ending, that false cliffhanger ending. I didn't like it. I wanted, give me like 4 more minutes of something, anything, but again, the intention of writing the story and the way the episodes are paced, maybe the next episode needs that to start. Maybe that's why that happens. But as a fan, I tell you, I was so angry about it. Not in a way like I wanted to see more and I was happy. I literally threw my remote control down on the floor. I was so upset about it. But definitely a step up from last week's episode, and I feel like we're heading back in a good direction with the Acolyte. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a 7 out of 10 for me. I enjoyed it. Again, I was going to give it an 8 because I felt like it really did sort of build some bonds between characters, but I can't do it with that ending. The ending just for me brings it down to a 7. So 7 out of 10 for me. But let me know what you guys thought about it. Your thoughts and opinions about any of these characters. Who do you think is hiding behind the mask? If it's already been spoiled, I'm sure somebody in the comments is going to leave it there. So be very careful, tread lightly in the comment section. But let me know what you think is happening with these characters. What's going on? Are you enjoying the Acolyte? Are you not enjoying the Acolyte? Can't wait to hear all of that and more. So leave it down in the comments below. See you in the next video.